less frightening. But yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank
you can go back to
you.
eating your food. Let's go back to the studio where we're interviewing for LGBTQ officer.
Thank you, Gina. Back here in the studio, we are interviewing for LGBTQ officer, and it's our first candidates of the night. It's Matt and Dan. But first, let's learn a bit more about the role. LGBTQ officer. The LGBTQ officer is responsible for representing the views and needs of LGBTQ students and making sure they are taken into account by the Students' Union and the university. Matt and Dan, thanks for being here.
Yeah, it's lovely to be here.
So I suppose as the first thing, could you introduce yourselves and why you think this role's for you?
So I'm Matt, and I think this role is for me because, really for both of us, because we've got such a passion about working for LGBT students. Obviously, we are in a time where LGBT is so much more accepted in society, but there are still those outliers, still those things that we think need to be tackled.
Yeah, I think it can be quite easily forgotten, with such visibility which can be present. It's quite easy to forget that there are still a lot of underlying issues that still need to be tackled, and that's really what drives me. Particularly stuff like mental health. That's if you've got experience with that, you obviously want to just try as hard as you can, just to make sure no one else has to go through that.
And you talk about these big systemic issues, and talk about them a lot in your manifesto and the challenges that we as LGBTQ people face.
Of course.
And what can you do as USU's LGBTQ officers to help with those issues that you identify?
Well, we want to. Well, for mental health specifically, we'd like to introduce sort of more support groups, stuff like that. It's just on the support group thing, we think obviously there's a big issue with mental health in the LGBTQ community because they are more likely to experience mental health issues. So we just want to introduce support groups which will help people meet others who have gone through similar stuff and just feel a bit less isolated, which can be a big problem, I think.
And one of the criticisms that's often levelled at LGBT societies and officers in universities all across the country is about diversity and intersectionality. How can you build a truly sort of intersectional, diverse LGBTQ network?
Well, I think that's one of the things we want to tackle as LGBT officers, because a lot of the time you do have those issues that are quite specific. So, for example, looking at transgender naming on documents, sort of not for non-binary students, you have genderless bathrooms. But really, we want to talk to everyone on the spectrum. I mean, our slogan, working for LGBTQ, really what we convey through that is we want to work for everyone, for people who identify as asexual, people who identify as a sexuality that maybe they don't even know. We want to be there for everyone.
Yes, it's very easy, I think, for people to forget, particularly because the LGBTQ community is small just generally, but how people identify within that community, although even small amounts of people within that, and it can be very easy at times to forget about them, and we just really want to make sure that they feel represented too.
And of course, that's not to say that issues such as transgender naming and genderless bathrooms isn't important. It's we want to make sure everything in that wide umbrella of LGBTQ+ is included.
And I suppose looking back at the last year of people in this role, and I'm going to events, things, you're quite new at the university, what have you identified as things that you think, we'd like to do that a little bit differently? What are the key things for you that you'd like to change?
Well, something we noticed when we were looking, because before we actually decided to run, we wanted to see what can we see has been done through LGBT social, LGBT network, and actually we struggled to find quite a few things. I mean, I think it was either Social Network One on the Facebook page. The last update had been in, I think it was May 2018. And we think as freshers coming into a university where it's quite sort of daunting, we want to find out more, we want to find who's that point of contact. Finding a page that's been updated nearly 2 years ago, that's not exactly, we want to make sure that it's constant updates, it's easy access.
And so as a final question, we've got another pair of people running for this role later on who we're going to meet. What do you guys think separates you and makes you the best qualified candidates for this role?
Well, I personally have less experience regarding this type of both campaigning and role just in general, but because I've experienced a lot of these issues, and because I've experienced what it's like to come into uni as a fresher, see what's there to support you as an LGBTQ student, that's where my passion comes from. Just to really, with that experience of coming here as a fresher, just to build on that and make the changes that I think are needed.
Thank you so much, Matt and Dan. I'm going to have to cut you off, but we're going to throw over to an interview for Disabled Students Officer with Liam in Studio Blue.
Yeah, I am going